Everything good? Okay. What do these people have in common? Joe Scarborough, Bill O'Reilly, Chris Matthews, Sean Hannity, and Rachel Maddow. These are just a few of today's news commentators. These are people that typically are not news reporters, unlike people from the famous newscasters of the 60s and 70s, like Walter Cronkite, David Brinkley, Chet Huntley. The above-mentioned people give their opinions to different news stories, while Cronkite, Huntley, and Brinkley reported the news in an unbiased fashion. What's the difference? I'd like you to listen to a couple of videos and listen to the tone and objectivity of these news reporters and commentators.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States. The weather couldn't be better. We have a brilliant shot at this moment, and here comes the President now. In fact, he's not in his limousine, he's departed the limousine, and he is walking.
Just go next
He
down
is
that
reaching.
cow.
This was another famous Mitt Romney comment that within minutes was broadcast everywhere, and certainly the lead-off item on newscasts. I want you to respond to this.
I want individuals to have their own insurance. That means the insurance company will have an incentive to keep you healthy. It also means that if you don't like what they do, you can fire them. I like being able to fire people who provide services to me.
Romney also took a beating for a remark this morning that initially sounded even more startling.
I like being able to fire people who provide services to me.
They missed the whole prior part of that comment. This was another famous Mitt Romney comment that within minutes.
My informal survey showed that 88% believes that there's bias in the media. I also agree with the majority about bias in the media, but I see bias on both sides, right and left, while 75% saw liberal bias and 25% was indifferent. What really surprised me was 75% get their news on the internet, 25% from cable news, and 12% with cable news and the local news. Now I'm going to sound like an old fart here, but when growing up, there was only 2 ways to get your news. That was either through your local or national TV station and your newspaper. Today I will show that there's bias in the media, talk about journalism schools, and the intentional or unintentional teaching of the bias, and what I believe should be done. Looking at major news stations, whether local, national, or cable, each station has an agenda. The agenda is to deliver the news in a supposed unbiased format. Stations like MSNBC, CNN, and most major national news stations lean left, while Fox News is the only one I could find that leaned right. No one is technically in the middle, just delivering the news with a straightforward, unbiased opinion. Tim Grosclose, an economics and political science professor at UCLA, used a 3-pronged test to quantify the slant quotient of news stories. Mr. Grosclose concluded that most media organizations aligned with the views of the liberal politicians. Theodore Dawes, a reporter and writer based in Alabama, states objectivity in journalism sense is a bare-boned restatement of facts. The concept of journalistic objectivity is fairly new, though. Most newspapers in the U.S. were partisan, serving either political or religious factions, and that's because those factions financed the papers. It took until 1904 for objectivity journalism to become commonplace, and only since 1925 has the practice been established as the norm. Marvin Olasky, a former journalism professor at the University of Texas, now the editor of the World magazine, and I lost my place, stated, "This involves the practice of strategic ritual so that they may advance their news stories while claiming objectivity. Very act of deciding what angles of the story to cover is inherently subjective," says public communication professor Gilles Gauthier of Laval University. The value of objective journalists adds goes well beyond getting individual stories right. It goes to the entire texture of information of society. Now that I have shown the presence of media bias, I would like to discuss where I feel reporters are exposed to the bias, and that is in journalism schools. Journalism schools have an obligation to teach students how to report the news and how to write the news in an unbiased fashion. Depending on the school you attend, your instructor or the school itself could be left or right, such as UC Berkeley, or right-leaning, such as Liberty University or Oral Roberts. Objectivity journalism sets out to establish the facts about a situation, report fairly the range of opinion around it, and take a first cut as to what arguments are most reasonable. Journalists should have to do professional reporting, should keep their personal opinions to themselves, and just state the facts. Journalism schools need to teach 6 principles. They are: democracy needs intelligent news selection, go hard on manipulators, swim against the flow by doing good journalism, practice proportionality, relentlessly provide context, and be a catalyst for informed discussion. I'd like to discuss a proposal now to try and correct the unintentional or unintentional bias of journalism schools. And that is, we should screen the journalism schools for media bias and change their teaching styles and or their format. Hospitals have to be accredited, so why not journalism schools? I propose having former journalism professors, editors, and reporters examine the curriculum of the school to make sure they are within the standards of teaching unbiased journalism. Certification would happen every 5 years. Today's news is more sensationalism than news. We want our news immediately without the report or reporter going through proper channels to make sure, 1, that it's newsworthy, 2, that the story is objective, and where are you getting your news? Are they objective? I've shown that there's bias in the media. I've shown how journalism schools intentionally or unintentionally teach that bias. And I feel I've given a proposal at what should be done for this problem. Just keep in mind the old adage, there are 2 sides to every story, but it seems like we only get one side. Thank you.